Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. Sigma's been in competitive for a number of weeks now and we haven't really talked about the major mistakes that you can make when playing him. Instead of just covering all 10 of these mistakes on my own, I decided to incorporate Fusions, who is a main tank player for the Boston Uprising. We sat down together to bring 10 points of mistakes that you really shouldn't make and what you should do instead. Definitely check out Fusions, he's on a big break at the moment so we'll be streaming a lot. Check out his Twitch in the description below. Let's go over the first mistake.
So one playstyle mistake that I see a lot of people make specifically is that they tend to just sit in main and shoot at the shields constantly, and after one or two fights you might be wondering why you're not really getting value. A solution to this problem can be to try and change up your positioning by either taking a flank or going to a high ground. Since you're so good at 1v1ing people, you can take those positions and really just get in a lot of damage behind them and behind shields. Sigma's a really versatile hero, and sometimes it can feel like when you're not doing much that you want to switch off of him, but most of the time he's very good to pick into a lot of different scenarios, so really just try and think about how you can change up the playstyle and not just switch off the hero to find an easier solution.
Of course, another mistake that you can make is going too far in the aggressive direction. You can play Sigma as a flanker like Fusions just mentioned. In fact, a lot of times it might be the best approach, but you do have to remember that of course you aren't a diva or a roadhog. You don't really have the same level of mitigation. You have Kinetic Grasp that can eat damage on your shield, but if somebody really jumps on top of you, you don't have the same survivability as say a roadhog for example. This can also be dictated by who you're playing with. If you're with a Zarya, that might sort of coerce you into playing more aggressively, but you just have to remember that you are playing the squishiest tank out of all of them. You have no armor to play with and not a lot of health to be fair, so playing far too aggressively is just going to get you killed. Instead, pick your fights, try and do damage from a distance, which is hard for Sigma with his effective range, and then as soon as you start to deal pretty deadly blows, that's when you can push in a bit more aggressively.
I've seen a lot of Orisa Sigma play since I've been playing ranked and Sigma has been out, and a big problem that I see all the time is that people will just throw out their shield off cooldown, and it's really bad because his shield recharges not too quickly, so you really can't afford to overuse it. A good way to layer it when you have an Orisa is to make sure that when the Orisa shield is up, you've called back your shield so that it's recharging. And then when the Orisa shield is down, you can throw back out your shield so that you always have cover, but you're not getting it unnecessarily damaged while your Orisa has a shield up as well.
Sigma's biggest weakness is dive. He doesn't have much in the way of dealing with people that are right on top of him. Tracer, Genji, Doomfist especially. And it's very easy to panic when a Tracer jumps on you to the point that you just start throwing out your shield in order to block them. Of course, the issue with these heroes is it's very easy for them to just move around your shield. The mistake is just trying to do what I'm doing on screen. It doesn't work at all. But one of the best bits of advice that I got for Winston is learning how to shield dance, and it's very much the case for Sigma as well. Being able to just place down one shield and dance between both sides of it makes it really difficult for a Tracer, Doomfist or Genji to follow up on you, and in that situation, you have the advantage in a 1v1. So even though Sigma is really weak to dive heroes, he can deal with the DPS quite well. When it's a Winston however that can damage through your barriers, that's where you might want to get moving.
I see a lot of people using their Kinetic Grasp after their shield breaks to try and run away from the enemy team or save themselves, and in actuality when it comes to actual games, it often is the case that it doesn't help you get out and you actually end up dying anyway. A way I like to use it, because I think it's quite underused, is to, when your shield is still up, walk in front of your shield and use your Kinetic Grasp so that you can get some shields back on your HP bar and also have a shield to fall back to so that they can't just run you down after your shift ends. You can almost think of it like a Zarya bubble where you're trying to get energy for yourself, except you're just getting some shields and saving your barrier a bit.
For the Accretion ability, it's the opposite really. I see a lot of people, and Fusions does as well, really overusing a boulder for reasons why you shouldn't. The first is just trying to do damage to barriers or tanky targets. And when it comes down to damage, just primary firing at a target is going to do more damage than Accretion just because of the long wind-up time that the ability has. You can get some pretty cool burst damage in by using Accretion and then firing your primary fire afterwards, but that's not the only way that you should use it. In fact, a really good way way to describe how the ability should work is like McCree's flashbang. You don't just want to use it willy-nilly, you kind of want to save it for situations where you end up in 1v1s, as it's a great CC ability, and as you've seen on screen how quickly it deals with a Hanzo that isn't expecting you on the flank. So the mistake is basically overusing Accretion, using it off cooldown, instead of saving it as a CC ability to stun a target that you can then follow up on afterwards. Don't use it to throw at shields or tanks basically, unless you're trying to interrupt an ultimate or a Roadhog trying to heal. Save it for squishies that you can then just bop on.
So if you're a Sigma player and you've been playing a lot of Sigma, you're probably getting paired with something like a Zarya a lot, and something I see happen all the time is that Sigmas will get greedy almost and try and stack their ultimates with a grav to try and get high value out of it. This ends up being really bad because if they use one support ult and end up surviving, say a Transcendence, and they live the grav and the Sigma ult, then you end up in a situation where you've just used your two slowest charging ultimates and team winning abilities into one support ult, and now if they've won the fight, you're going to have a really hard time retaking or getting into a new fight. So really try and use it separately from those ultimates, either to force cooldowns or after you've used the Graviton or something else, so that you can really get the kills with those ults or set up your teammates for better trades. Think of it almost like a Reinhardt Earthshatter, how if you've used the Graviton and they have no cooldowns or ultimates to live it, and you know that they're going to die anyway, you don't want to use that Sigma ulti because you're effectively just wasting an ultimate that you could use for next fight.
Another tip for the ultimate that's a bit more nuanced is to not be tempted to fly too high up in the air. It's a really cool addition to the ultimate, being able to sort of fly and hover over people, but it makes you such a big target in the air for stuff like sleeps, tactical visor maybe that might come out of a soldier, or just a McCree with really good aim. Not only that, you might lose line of sight with your healers on the ground if you go too high. It's not a major thing, it's not going to win or lose you games, but just try not to go too high into the air. But I do think that the ability to fly with your ultimate should be used in ways of being able to use cover to flank behind the enemy team so they don't know where you're coming from. But I wouldn't overthink it by trying to fly below King's Row as an example like we've seen in the past. But just don't fly too high.
So with Sigma, he's a new hero, his ultimate's very good. It can be very tempting to go for these big multi-kills with his ults and try and get that play of the game. I know I've done it myself multiple times, but if you tend to go for the front line with his ult and bring those tanks up in the air and try and kill them, oftentimes they'll be saved by a Transcendence or an Ana healing from the background or even a Baptiste field. So something that I've really started to try and do when playing Sigma and using his ultimate is to go for those supports, go for the Baptiste, go for the Zen to force that Transcendence, or go for the Ana and kill those priority targets, even if it means one man ulting them, just so that you can kill those targets and then win the fight easier. So to end on a piece of advice that's more general and easier to understand, but it's something that everyone will experience because ranked, obviously, even with flex queue, is not this utopia where everyone's going to pick the right heroes. So when you get paired with different tanks, if the enemy team has a Sigma Orisa and you have a Sigma Zarya or something else, maybe a Sigma Hog, something that doesn't have as much shields, obviously just playing slow and playing into those shields is not going to be the right play. So you really want to think about how the playstyle of the other tank that you're playing with plays into the enemy team, or maybe the different DPS that you have. For example, if you have a Zarya on your team and they have a Sigma Orisa, you really want to be more aggressive, trying to farm your Zarya energy and then pushing past the shields together so that you can actually do damage. If you end up playing slow against mirrors like that, it can result in you just losing slowly.
And these are all the tips that we wanted to go over in this video, but before we end, this is where you can find more from Fusions.
If you guys want to see more of my Sigma play or whatever else, you can go to my Twitter @Fusions or my Twitch Fusions_OW. I'm streaming pretty regularly when I'm back in the UK, so yeah, hopefully I'll see you there.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Be definitely sure to check out Fusions down below in the description. Take care, and we'll see you next time.